My name's Alexia Neophytides, and I'm here with two feature-length docs. One is called Dear 13, and the other one is called Fire Through Dry Grass, which I co-directed with Andres J. Molina.
Okay, so this is the 17th interview we've done. Lauren asked me earlier, do you have any favorites? And I said, you're not supposed to ask. It's like asking a parent who's your favorite kid, which is easy for me because I have an only child. But
I am one too.
But I will confess, the more I've learned about your films, plural, both of them here, both the subject matter, the complexity of each project, and the fact that you have two of them, you're my hero, and you're instantly my favorite.
Gosh,
so I just want to,
you.
and apologies to the 16 other folks I interviewed. I loved you all too, but this is amazing. So let me just talk me through the timeline of the two projects.
They were different, which is why they both, it
They'd
just so
have to be.
happened. Yeah, exactly. They would have to be, you're right. I started Dear 13 about 6 years ago, a little less than 6 years ago. And so that one, we finally finished we finished it in 4.5 years, and then we premiered at Doc NYC last November.
Okay.
And then the other film we started right after the pandemic hit.
Right.
So that was shorter.
Right.
I think it took us 3 years to make that film, and we have a very large team with all these amazing people working on it. So they were very different projects.
Okay. So Dear 13, how describe the casting process for me. How you found these wonderful subjects as dispersed around the world. What is the process that goes into that?
It was all various different things. Actually, the first 13-year-old that I found was in Bristol, Vermont, which was just right here. And I think I just started with like a really silly Google search about 13-year-olds, and I found Ethan, who was running for governor of Vermont.
Yes. Yeah.
Do you remember him on the ballot?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I remember getting a message from family members, like, what is going on in your state?
Yeah.
There's a kid running for governor.
Yeah, and it wasn't, it wasn't necessarily how I had envisioned the project going.
Right.
I wasn't really looking for like famous 13-year-olds.
Exactly.
But at the same time, I was like, how could I not call and try to meet this person?
Right.
So I sent him a message, and I talked to his parents and told them, what I wanted to do with the film, and they were amazing. They invited me to come up. And then another one, a kid from Arkansas was in a short film that my husband had made when he was younger, and we all just really got along, and he's a hunter.
Yeah.
So he was already telling us all of these stories that we just knew nothing about hunting, and then one was my student. I used to teach documentary filmmaking to middle schoolers, and she was one of my students. And then I had a few fixers who helped me in different countries look for people, and then word of mouth for some of the others. Instagram, I found one of them on Instagram.
That's amazing. Well, so what is it like to work with children and then adolescent subjects? It's, I imagine, it's one process on a scripted, fictional film. Even though with a documentary, you're subject to the whims of their mood that day. Or, I guess, is it just, well, this is real, so we're just capturing who they are in this point of time, no matter whether it's what we were expecting or not.
Yeah, it wasn't that much different than working with adults.
Okay.
Honestly, kids are in a way almost more savvy with being filmed and used to it.
Right.
So they're, for the most part, we're very open with me. I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I can be a little childlike. I don't know. Maybe we just vibe.
I definitely am.
Got
So
along well. I don't
that.
know.
Yeah.
But I didn't feel like there were many whims that I had to, to deal with. But I also think that happens with everyone, and that's part of documentary filmmaking. You're just are there, and you're right. You capture what you get, and that becomes, you know, what's in your film, and you have to kind of roll with it.
How did you peg this age, this one particular?
That's a good question. Lots of different reasons, and actually, as I made the film, I sort of discovered things that I think probably had been there at the beginning of why I was interested in this age. But for me, it was a few things. One, it was my favorite age growing up. I loved it. It was like the last year that I was with all of my childhood friends before we went to high school. And it feels very nostalgic to me. It was also, I was teaching all of these middle school students of this age, and I would see them come in one way at the beginning of the year, and then I'd see them leaving like really vastly different. And it seemed to be like the age where they were really learning to figure out who they wanted to be for themselves, and like who they wanted to be as they were stepping into the world as adults later. You know, what they were interested in, these kind of ideas, like maybe separating from their parents and that kind of a thing. So, and I also think it's this age where you have still like a real innocence about you, but you are starting to get confronted with all of these larger issues in the world that you have to deal with.
You're on the cusp of that.
Yeah, exactly. So it and that's the word. It's like definitely on the cusp of something. And it's like this moment that I just wanted to bottle, I guess, or a feeling that I wanted to.
I can still remember, so my son is 17 now, but I remember at 13 describing to people, it's like some days he's like an 8-year-old, other days he's 17. You know, the pendulum, and there was no rhythm to the way that pendulum would swing.
Yeah, I mean, you haven't seen the film yet, but there's one kid in the film who is showing me a picture of his girlfriend, and then he puts the phone down, and he's like, I do like Legos, and he walks over. So it's like, perfect. You know, in that 30 seconds, I feel like that really
encapsulates it.
Yeah, totally.
So you also need to build, or not also, you need to build trust with parents to allow this camera into their children's lives. What was that process like?
They were just all so amazing, these families, really. I think, first of all, if someone doesn't want to be filmed, I don't want to film. Like, I don't want to film them. And if their family isn't into it, I would never want to do that.
Somebody,
no, I mean, I think for me, making films is like a partnership with the people who are in them. And, you know, you're both there for each other. And I guess getting something out of it emotionally. So, and that would go for the parents as well. But I think it probably helped that I had been teaching for a long time, you know.
They knew that you were of this world.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't my first time, you know, hanging around with young people or whatever. So that probably helped. And then, I don't know, I was talking to Ethan's parents last night and asking them why they let me come in too. And
what did they say?
Ethan's dad said we had a long talk on the phone. He was like, I don't know, I could just tell for the first time.
And they were used to their son putting himself out there.
They were used to him putting himself out there too, But they did have a lot of media requests that they turned down.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really interesting. So I want to switch gears now to your second prize-winning documentary. That so many of the films that I've spoken to with folks, we've referred to as COVID films but for a lot of them, they were either in process in a certain way and COVID changed the trajectory of it, or what they were normally doing, like our puppeteer, could not do it, so she turned to film. In your case, you came to this subject because of COVID, like as a subject matter.
Sort of.
Okay.
So the story takes place on Roosevelt Island, which is a tiny island in New York City. It's like part of Manhattan, but it's a separate little island in the East River. And I grew up there.
Oh, really?
I really loved growing up there, and I talk about it to everyone I meet. And so I had a former professor who moved to Roosevelt Island and had met this group who belonged to a small organization called Open Doors, and they call themselves the Reality Poets. They would write poetry and travel around the city talking to kids about gun violence. And they were all involved in different arts also.
Okay.
And so one of them, Andres J. Molina, who
Yeah.
became my co-director, was looking for a mentor to teach him, or to study filmmaking with,
Okay.
really. And he got a grant from the city to do that. And she knew that I was from the island, and she was like, I bet you guys would hit it off. So she hooked us up together. We met on a blind work date.
Yeah,
And it was
that's
like,
awesome.
we got along really well. And so we started working together in 2019, but
Okay.
it was more in a mentor-mentee capacity. And then Jay wanted to make a film about the reality poets, because
Yeah.
they're like an awesome group.
Yeah.
And they're like, for sure not your typical, like as you would close your eyes and imagine nursing home, who lives in a nursing home, they're like young and hip and,
That was my first instinct, and I was chiding myself, and I've had conversations with people about not only films that focus on underrepresented communities, but also misrepresented communities. And again, we have this stereotype or trope of nursing homes as being a place for old people.
Yeah.
And immediately it's like, not quite.
Yeah.
Not exactly. And,
Yeah.
And let's
Not
look
only.
at that. Not only.
Yeah, right. So Jay was making this film about the reality poets, and then COVID hit, and I'm sure you know what happened in nursing homes. They put a patient in his room who had COVID, and he called Jenny Lee, the woman who had started Open Doors, the organization he was part of, and they were like, we need to make a film about this, and then they called and invited me to co-direct with them.
And the title of the film comes from that quote of what COVID was doing.
Yes,
to the nursing
actually,
home.
it's a Cuomo quote.
Oh, that's
said
right,
that.
from his press
Yeah.
conference. That's
Uh-huh.
right.
Yeah.
Totally forgot that's where it came from him. So the filmmaking, one of the, again, having not seen the full length, but the trailer, you accentuate, I think, the drama of what we're seeing with these, with the flashes of animation.
Yeah.
At what point did that become like, oh, we can play with almost reality in a way by entering these surreal elements? When did that come about?
When did that come in? Well, pretty early in the process, actually, because Jay had been working with animation before on some of his poetry stuff, and he taught himself how to use After Effects and Final Cut and all that stuff by watching YouTube videos, which is like really amazing.
Yes.
And so we knew we wanted to incorporate something, but maybe find our own style together. And we also knew that our footage was limited, quite frankly,
Right.
and we wanted to bring out the elements of their poetry is woven throughout the entire film too. So we wanted to highlight the poetry, and we also wanted to highlight their interior space.
Yes.
So, like, the whole entire film feels very claustrophobic because we're like in a Zoom box or we're in a GoPro and they're locked inside the nursing home.
Right.
And at times you come outside and, I'm filming outside what everyone else is allowed to do or whatever. But we wanted to punctuate the inside worlds and be able to bring out their backstories really in a different way. So each of our characters sort of tells us where they're from. And we mix that with their poetry and
well,
use the
there's a
animation
literary
for that.
quality
Yes.
to it,
Yeah.
which accentuates it.
And we were so lucky. We found this amazing. We saw a film and loved the animation, and for a few months we were like, really want to find someone who can do something like that. And then our editor was like, why don't we ask this person?
I've experienced, as I edit a magazine, and as I've had that same conversation with the art directors, like, I would love to get an illustrator like so-and-so, and he's like, well, should we ask her first?
Yeah,
and I was like, yes, let's do that.
Right, but
Let's do
sometimes
that.
you just don't even imagine.
No.
I think actually during COVID, all of those things became more possible,
They
you
did.
know, because people were just more accessible.
They were there, they had more
they had
time, and
exactly.
they wanted to work.
Exactly, totally. So anyway, he came on with us really early, and it was very collaborative. Like,
That's
we would have
great.
an idea, he would try something, we would. It's not usually how you do animation. Like,
Right.
usually everything is done, and because
Right.
it's so expensive.
Right.
But he's really into process.
So it was almost improvisational
Yeah.
in a way.
Sort of.
That's
Yeah.
great.
It was great.
I know you've had been very successful directing documentary series. How was the working on a feature-length film different from the series experience?
It was very different. It was I would say, I mean, everything is hard,
Right.
But I think this was a lot harder. I'll speak for Dear 13 first.
Okay.
Because we just didn't really have money.
Yeah.
You know, we had a little bit of money in the beginning, and then like nothing for 4 years, and then
Right.
we got a grant at the end. So it was like a lot of me, like scrounging air miles
Yeah.
and doing a lot of stuff by myself, and then scrounging money together for our editor, who was also another producer on the film. So it was hard, and it's hard to keep up your like belief in the project,
That it
you
just
know?
happened. I'm sure there are many times
Or like,
where
why am I
you
doing
felt
this?
like,
Is anyone gonna watch it?
Exactly.
I don't know. Or does anyone care?
Right.
Probably not. Yeah.
Yeah, I can, especially, and I feel like there is, talk about misrepresentation, there is this, glamorous idea of documentarians who get to go to these amazing places
Yeah.
and meet these amazing people and tell these amazing stories, but it's like, well, okay, but how?
Yeah.
And it's the fundraising and
It's hard.
and the producing support.
Yeah. But the other film was totally different. We started, working on this thing. It was so scary because COVID was unfolding. We were worried about everyone's lives,
Right.
At the time. And the reality poets who were in the film, along with Jenny Lee and the Open Doors team who were outside of the nursing home, were organizing as this was
Right.
going on to try to make change. And so we sort of followed this movement. And the film just kind of snowballed.
Yeah.
We got a grant, then we got another grant, then we got ITVS funding, which was huge. I don't know if you know what that is,
Yep.
but it's, anyway, so it was like amazing. And then more stuff, and we just, I don't know, also the same thing happened with like, we just kind of gathered all of these wonderful people as we went along who believed in the story and
Right.
believed in the reality poets and in our film team also, and it was kind of it was just wonderful.
That's
Really, I
great.
mean, it was also really, really hard, but it
right.
was, we had a lot of support.
That's terrific. So how, especially, well, for both, you become, very close with your subjects,
Yeah.
whether it's the teens or their parents or the reality poets, people you meet through the nursing home. How do you then move on to the next? How do you let go?
Oh, that's a good question. Sometimes you don't.
Yeah.
Like some of the young people in Dear 13, most of them I'm still in touch with in some way,
Right.
some of them less than others, and sometimes it's through their parents,
Right.
like there's one who's probably now 18. No,
Yeah.
I think he's 17, but
Okay.
him and his mother, she speaks French, but I Google Translate,
Okay.
like we do, we exchange emails, and I see Ethan's parents
Right.
sometimes. I think it becomes like a family that maybe you just don't always keep in touch with. On some of my other projects, I mean, yeah, of course, you can't keep in touch with everyone. I think with the reality poets, I mean, we're going to be friends forever.
I'm sure.
I can't imagine that.
I don't see how you can not be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And Jay and I are like super close now,
Yeah.
I think we've just transitioned into being great friends.
That's amazing.
But it is, I guess it is different
Yeah.
for every project.
How, and I don't want to take you out of the moment because this is the moment for these two wonderful films that are getting the attention
It's
they
a
deserve.
great moment.
Yeah, it's a great, so I don't want to take you out of that, but I do want you to talk to me a little bit if you're thinking about what comes next for you.
Project-wise?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm
Okay.
so tired. Like I feel
That's
like
a-
my creative brain
that's a
really
great
needs a
answer,
reset,
Of course.
Fire Through Dry Grass is coming out on POV on PBS.
That's
Yeah, it's great. At the end of October.
Oh, good.
And then Dear 13 is going to be released on VOD around Christmas time.
Oh, nice.
I'm still waiting to see if something happens with streaming, whatever. We'll
Okay.
see. Hopefully, fingers crossed.
Streaming is
I know.
insane.
It is.
Yeah.
But I'm really involved right now in the impact campaign for Fire Through Dry Grass. So
Okay.
we have so many things that we want to do. If anyone wants to follow
That's amazing.
what's going on with the reality poets, they can go to our website,
I'm sure people will.
firethroughdrygrass.com. Yeah.
It will be, I anticipate this once I get a chance to see it, is that it will be a relation, obviously different than your relationship with them, but viewers' relationships with them
I
too.
hope
It won't be,
so.
I saw this cool movie about these folks,
Yeah.
and then forget about it.
I
mean,
hope that's the case. And they're Pete, who's in the film and is also a co-producer on the project,
Mhm.
and Vince, who started Nursing Home Lives Matter, which is the movement that the film sort of follows. not sort of, the film follows,
Right.
are all really involved in our impact campaign,
great.
and they've created a new nursing home bill of rights, and the hope is to get that implemented in nursing homes all around the country and really connect with other nursing home residents. So there's a lot of work to be done, and it's
Right.
different than the filmmaking work, so I'm happy to be able to support them
Right.
in that work. You know, I didn't really know anything about this, so I'm just,
Sure.
I really am there just to support really
Yeah.
and see what I can do. And then creatively, I don't know, like I'm just
Well, you
gonna
deserve
take a break.
Yeah, I think you deserve one. Well, thank you. Thank you for bringing your films here.
Thank
you
you so
for
much.
coming here.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you got to see Ethan's family so
Oh yeah,
close
me
to
too.
home.
Yeah, it was great.
I'm sure they enjoyed having the film be local too. For
Yeah,
them.
I think they did.
So thank you.
Thank you.